Welcome back to Life Between Coasts. We're glad you're here. I'm Leah, your host. And today I'd like to talk about an example of a synchronicity. There are many different examples out there. I've talked about numbers in the previous episode. I've talked about thinking of somebody that you hadn't spoken with in a long time. And I've also talked about finding an answer that you weren't actually seeking. But sometimes there are those moments that we experience that might not be a synchronicity that's remarkable or dominant or something that you can pick up on. And in some cases, it might not even be considered a synchronicity at all, but just a connection between another human. One of those connections that I'd like to talk about is an actor that left this world just over a year ago. This actor, his name was Emmett Walsh. I'm certain you've seen him around. You probably don't recognize his name. He was probably, 200 plus movies, lots and lots of credits over his many years of being in the acting world. When I was 17, I was working at a country club in my hometown. I was a waitress, and one of the things that we did would host parties, benefits, fundraisers. Every Monday and Tuesday that's when these events would occur. So every morning, Monday and Tuesday morning through the summer, we'd arrive sometime between 4:30 and 5 o'clock in the morning to set up for breakfast. We'd greet the golfers when they came in, served them breakfast, morning drinks, got them on the course, cleaned up, got ready for lunch, had the golfers come in for lunch, cleaned up, got them back out on the course, had them set up everything for dinner, maybe take a 2-hour break, and then service for dinner. They were very long and eventful days. In this one occurrence, there was a celebrity golf outing. So we had a lot of comedians, some actors, and it was a good group of people. That's when I was first introduced to Mr. Walsh. He was sitting at a table with probably 6 or 8 other people. I think there were some former NFL players, again, actors and comedians. And at the end of their lunch service, he stopped me and pulled out of his wallet a $2 bill. He handed that bill to me and said, "If you don't spend it, you'll never be broke." Every time I saw that man's face in a movie, on the screen, I said, he gave me a $2 bill, and he told me, if I don't spend it, I'll never be broke. And I would always be received with, "Oh, okay, sure, whatever." That was always the comment. "Okay, sure, nice story. Good job." And then upon reading of his demise, again, just over a year ago, March 19th, 2024, is when he died in his home in his Vermont. One of the articles, or many of the articles, that recited bits about his life and what he portrayed as a human, every single article mentioned that 2 things that he would carry to set: his list of credits and $2 bills to hand out to people. And with every $2 bill that this man handed out, he would recite the same thing: if you don't spend it, you'll never be broke. Now, that necessarily is not a synchronicity, but it is a signature gift of his. And that one signature gift connects countless of people together, from Hollywood to Vermont to his home state of New York, to whomever he handed those $2 bills out to. So even though I'm sitting here by myself on this set, I'm connected to a countless number of people out there because of Mr. Walsh. Another synchronicity that I'd like to tell you about is Alexis. Alexis is my assistant in the tax office. She's the creative consultant for this podcast, and all around a generally good human being. She's listening, so I should be nice. There was a reason why she's in my office, and it was the universe that dictated her path to join me here. About 3 years ago, I posted an ad in one of those many online job hiring sites. Don't want to give credit to too many, but one that would have served to show my job posting to a number of applicants, probably in the several thousand. Alexis applied for the job. I printed out a dozen resumes to review, went over experience, qualifications, why they might be a good fit for the office. I also inquired with a couple other people to review the resumes with me just to have their perspective. And 2 were scheduled for interviews. One was Alexis, and one was another person. Alexis showed up a day early. The other person canceled. I extended the offer to her, and she started right away. The next year, we're sitting in the office, and we're just talking about random life things. And she was actually moving at the moment, or at that time. And she was temporarily going to be living with her father, who lives in a local town near us. And I happened to know that town, so I asked what road he lived on, and she indicated what road. And I said, well, I know that neighborhood. And she said, yes, well, his sister-in-law lives a couple houses over. I said, okay. I said, well, what road? And we looked and identified the road that it was on. And I said, well, what house? And so she narrowed down and she looked at the house, and we zoomed in and we saw the address. When I saw the address of the house, my heart skipped a beat, because my mister, and that's my significant other of nearly 17 years, not quite certain if I'm going to introduce him yet. You'll find out why. But at any rate, we found that the house that Alexis's father's sister-in-law lives in was the house that my mister grew up in. Of the millions plus houses in southeastern Michigan, of the thousands of people that could have applied for the job, Alexis ended up in my office. Another synchronicity that has occurred in my life has been when rescuing my dad from foreclosure. Unfortunately, because of his depression after the loss of my mom, the rut that he may have found himself in, the predicament, he fell behind on payments. He didn't know what to do. Of course, we're just coming out of the recession at that moment. And I tried to negotiate with the bank to see if there was any way that we could settle on an amount and I could buy his house for him. Unfortunately, they didn't want to negotiate. The mortgage company made a mistake, however. And this mistake was that they actually wrote the mortgage debt off as bad debt. And because my father had escrowed his taxes, they stopped paying the taxes on the house too. In Michigan, you have 3 years to catch your taxes up, 3-year period. Otherwise, the county will foreclose on your property. I told my dad I could not afford to save his house for him. But we needed to roll the dice because if the mortgage company stopped paying the taxes, there was a chance, a slim chance, that I'd be able to buy his house back at a tax foreclosure auction. But to be prepared, just in case we weren't successful. So we did. We rolled the dice. We let it go for 3 years. Finally, the house was foreclosed on for non-payment of property taxes. We waited for the auction date. We arrived. We were able to bid on the property, and we were successful in paying for it. Getting the winning bid, of course. Now, my dad was secure in his house. He had a roof over his head, and I didn't have to worry. Now, here's the synchronicity. In order for all of this to have occurred, certain things had to be aligned, and these things were out of my control. The state of Michigan was in charge of the auction at this time for that specific county. So you physically had to be present at a hotel named by them for the auction and pay the money for the price of the house at that time in person. Most of our counties in the state were using an auction house based in a private company, a title company, and they were all put online. That auction house posts pictures, property condition reports, exact addresses, full descriptions. And because it's online, anybody in the world can bid on that property. In fact, I used to buy houses early on using a tax auction. And unfortunately, it's not something that is easily done these days. Tax auctions, you can't see inside a home. You can't see anything wrong with the home. You can't even step foot on the property. And you pay market rate for them. So watch out. That's just a real estate advice. But going back to my father, the way the state actually handled the auction, they only put the parcel number and the legal description. They didn't put the address. They never posted a picture. There wasn't a sign out front, and there was no online web presence. These are things that were out of my control, but somehow aligned perfectly. Because the next year, after we were able to successfully win at the auction and make sure that my dad was secured in his home, the state of Michigan turned all of the counties over to that same title check company that put everything online for the world to bid on. If it was 1 year later, I would not have been able to save my dad's house. So let's talk a little bit about my philosophy and how I look at this. When my mother first introduced me to that word of synchronicity when I was 14, first it was, wow, that's incredible. Second, it was, how can I use this in my life? And third was now viewing this the rest of my life from that point forward through the lens of finding a connection with other people. I'm in no way qualified as a counselor or therapist or life coach or anybody that would be certified to be discussing this. I am a student of life, and because of that, I've seen how the universe can whisper to me. I've seen the patterns that it displays for me. And I hope to be able to bring that to you. And I hope if you can just get a glimpse of what a synchronous event looks like in your life, that you'll be able to apply this lens of sorts. Not looking through rose-colored glasses, of course, but it would be viewing life in a different way, instead of how can you get on top, or how you can be better than that person, or instead of comparing yourself to somebody else. You can use synchronicity to find your path, to discover your destiny and fate, to fulfill and live your purpose. I'm not entirely sure what my purpose is. I still haven't figured that out. But I can tell you, I have an old soul. I've experienced a lot more in my life than most people my age. And with every experience, there's opportunity to learn from it. So I am that student of life. Synchronicities may not always be what you might view as a positive thing in your life. There might be an event that could be determined to be a synchronicity that might be a negative, or a bad thing could have occurred. And that might happen, but it's all in how you react to it. In the little bit that I told you about myself from the first episode, you've learned that I've had quite a bit of loss in my life. But if I looked at each individual dying, or looking at myself as strictly being a sole survivor and how depressing that could be, I probably wouldn't want to leave my bed. I'd probably be a small, or at least feel like a small, insignificant being curled up into the fetal position, not wanting to leave my home. But I can't live life like that, because even the people that have left me already want me to live my life, because life is, well, say that again, Leah, life is worth living. So each moment that has affected me negatively, I choose to put a positive spin on that. Yes, my mother left me when I was only 25, and she 51. But I think back of everything that she taught me. Simple things. Things that are part of the 10 Commandments. Things that we should do every day. Treat people how you want to be treated. Be kind. Say please and thank you. Incidentally, I think it was UCLA that did a study about a year ago, maybe less than a year ago, of 1,000 participants. And they found that after polling, roughly 7% of people say please and thank you. I don't know if it's Midwest nice, which it shouldn't be, but I hear it quite often around here. I say it dozens of times a day. Anytime I speak to somebody or ask for something, I say please. And when I receive it, I say thank you. That's something that we should start a trend with, don't you think? In terms of optimism, I'm very content with where I'm at. I have to be optimistic. I have to know that every day I'm going to encounter a new person, and that every day I might be able to impact that person by just giving them a smile, or asking them how their day was today, or how they're doing. They may not be honest with me. They may say, oh, it's going fine, and not tell me their troubles. But that's okay. As long as they know that somebody is thinking of them or saying hello to them, then they're acknowledged as being a person, a human. Other rules that my mother taught me: if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. I think she took that from Thumper. That's what we determined, anyways. Thumper, of course, being the rabbit from Bambi. Simple things, very elementary if you think about it, but things that we can put into practice daily. In my young life of 45 years, I found that my parents were responsible for me from 0 to 18. That 18 to 30, you're really just figuring things out. That from 30 to 40, things start clicking. And you really start getting in groove with what you think should be your destiny or purpose. Whether it be a job, family, marriage. And by age 40, for me, I began to feel more comfortable in my own skin. It's not that I worried that what anybody thought about me, but I just was more confident in being able to stand up for myself. I always joke and say that when men get old, they always refer to them as distinguished. And that when women start to gray and get old, we're just old. I like to describe myself as a fine wine. I get better with age. There are a lot of negative things that can influence us. Negative energy, specifically, is what we're trying not to attract. I may sound a little life coachy, but I may have been there. I've been in your shoes at certain times. I've worked in a lot of different industries. In fact, I started my first business when I was 10 years old. It was a car wash. I used to walk around. We even had business cards, but we had a menu of outside only, inside only, or both. And we'd go and knock on doors in the neighborhood. I had a vacuum that I carried with me and a bucket of supplies. The only thing that you needed to provide was a place to plug the vacuum in and give me use of your hose. It was just for candy money, but it gave me the start of the formation of my work ethic. My parents were both very hard workers, and I saw that and I witnessed that, and that instilled in me what it took to be successful. You had to work hard, you had to persevere, and you had to adapt, improvise, and overcome if something got in your way. I think that alone is lost on many generations, younger generations specifically. And I hope that the stories that we share, not just mine, but the people that we invite through, can influence those lives so they can understand that they don't have to give up. That if they take the time to listen, that they can too also achieve and overcome those same obstacles. It's a funny thing. I actually just mentioned this yesterday or a couple days ago to Alexis. We were talking about friends, and And I said, it's funny. One thing I don't bring to the table. I don't have many friends. I have one friend specifically. Any relationship that I've ever been in was always with their friends. I was the add-on, and it was their friends. And I guess it wasn't by choice not to have any friends. It's just the way that it happened. I think part of it was because I was an only child, so I was used to being around adults. So being with people in my own peer group may have been frustrating. I'm not certain. Maybe it was because we moved so much during my childhood. Maybe it was because I just didn't feel that I could be close with anyone. I don't have the answers for that, and that's okay. But it is funny when I do speak to people and I say, well, I don't have any friends. And if those people actually know me, they say, well, we know that. But I can tell you is, I know a lot of people. I come into contact with several thousand on an annual basis. And that's just not going out to stores. That's seeing people, clients that come into my place of business, people that I help in other fields, people that I may have consulted with. But the one take that I hope that they go away or they leave me with or leave from me with is that I was as helpful as possible and that they experienced happiness and joy while they were interacting with me. I make a lot of choices on a daily basis. I choose to be happy. I choose to be optimistic. I choose to try to deliver that same message to anyone that I come in contact with. Some other basic rules of life that were taught to me were as simple as you attract more honey with bees, or you attract more bees with honey. I always say that backwards. I never call a customer service agent and am irate with them just because there's a phone that separates us or a phone line or some invisible airspace. It doesn't give me any right to be mean to them. And I hope to have people that listen to this message and reflect and say, I could do better. I could say more please and thank you. I can be more kind. Because just posting it on a social media site doesn't mean you put it into action. It's the action that we need. And that's the first step to bringing us together. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what political party you're with, what God you preach or pray to, whether you believe or not. But it's just to remember that we're all human, that we're all connected, and that synchronicities allow us to believe that there's more to this than just what we go through every day. Thank you again for listening to the episode. We hope you've enjoyed it. We will be dropping an episode each week, every Wednesday. It'll be available on all streaming platforms or where you find your podcasts at. We'll also be available on YouTube. So if you'd like to see the video of the set and what we look like, you're more than welcome to that as well. You can also find us on all the social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok, where I'm certain Alexis will make several videos making fun of me. That's true. She likes to make fun of me. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe, and to tell other people about this, and to start looking at how synchronicities have affected your life, and start seeing those messages or those whispers from the universe in your present day. If you know somebody that has a story to tell, or you have one yourself, please reach out to us. You can go to the website, lifebetweencoasts.com, and fill out the contact information, where you can also subscribe to know when we have upcoming events or special releases. Or you can email us. You can send the email to realpeople@lifebetweencoasts.com. Again, we're glad you're here. Thank you again for listening to us. And we hope you have a wonderful, joyous, and happy day. Bye-bye.